Returning to the dormitory, Cyan had to carry the little dragon, who had grown surprisingly fast. I knew that a dragon's growth spurt is faster than humans. But she looks like she's about 6 years old now. The little dragon now had her hair neatly tied up and was dressed in well-fitting clothes. Seeing Cyan return, she ran happily and called out, "Welcome back, Papa." Cyan was still in a daze, thinking, even a dragon-human hybrid grows this fast? She might look my age soon. Brian scratched his head awkwardly and said, "Ah, she keeps growing so fast." Cyan nodded in agreement. It's going to get harder to raise her in secret with how fast she's growing. The demonic sword Karam was sound asleep, oblivious to everything. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from outside the door. It was Sarika. She stood leaning against the door, adjusting her glasses, and said, "Eventually, you won't be able to hide her anymore. I can help hide the demonic sword, but I can't help you hide a draconic human. Especially if you go wild like you did today. What the hell were you thinking?" She frowned, her face tense, teeth grinding in frustration. Karam, still half asleep, murmured, "Huh? I feel like someone's talking about me." Sarika, noticing how quickly the little dragon had grown, was equally astonished. "She's growing scarily fast. I didn't see her for just a bit, and she's already this big. It's up to you how you deal with something you picked up during a mission. But something like this is going to be hard to handle." Cyan replied, "Brian is in charge of taking care of her. There's a barrier set up in the dorm too, so Karam and this kid's presences should be concealed." Brian, puzzled, asked, "I have to take care of a child?" Sarika handed Cyan a dark red letter and said, "Well, that's as long as you don't create trouble." Cyan glanced at the letter, a hint of disappointment on his face. "This is rather disappointing for a reward for winning the duel." Sarika stepped outside and warned, "You be careful for a while. Nothing good will come out of getting too much attention." Brian curiously asked, "Young master, what is that?" Cyan sighed, "Ah, a warning letter." Brian was confused. "A warning letter?" Cyan nodded, "Yeah, it's telling us we're going to be kicked out for misbehaving." Brian was shocked and yelled out, "What, are we going to be kicked out?" Seeing Brian's reaction, the baby dragon also worriedly chimed in, "What do we do, Papa? Are we going to be living off the streets?" Seeing the adorable face of the baby dragon, Cyan couldn't help but be amazed. "Where did you learn to say that kind of thing? Do you even know what that means?" "Hold on, she's growing way too fast," he said, then proceeded to pat the baby dragon's head reassuringly, saying, "Not yet. You don't need to worry about anything." Brian was extremely worried, asking, "Are you sure it'll be alright? If we go back to Velia's, Cyan quickly reassured him, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to issue a complaint." Cyan noticed a detail in the expulsion notice. "The dean sent this to me himself. It wasn't from the administration office. That must mean that the dean wishes to talk to me." Remembering the previous encounter with the headmaster in their past life, when the headmaster had asked Cyan, "You want to enter the Knights of Light? Have you finally decided to live for the sake of your brother?" Cyan, being young and naive at the time, had nodded without hesitation. But the headmaster seemed to know more and gave advice to Cyan, implying it wasn't a fitting path for him. Cyan's eyes became tense, mixed with a hint of anger. The headmaster chuckled, "Haha. I guess you're aware of that too. Then let me give you some advice. Nothing good will come out of taking this path. Whether you face trials or bear a cruel fate, you won't benefit from anything. That's what it's like to live as someone's doll. No matter the result, you're just going to end up blaming your brother." Cyan was astonished that the headmaster could make such an accurate observation right from the start, showing the headmaster's keen insight. This was something Cyan had heard during their meeting in the past life. "I wonder what he's going to tell me this time," Cyan thought. While lost in thought, Brian spoke up again, Young master, shouldn't we give this child a name?" "A name? Yeah, we can't keep calling her Kit," Cyan replied. Without much thought, Cyan immediately suggested the name Nana. Brian felt uneasy that Cyan had come up with the name so quickly without considering it. Suddenly, the baby dragon spoke up with excitement. She felt very happy at the moment. "Good, Nana. It's still Nana spelled backwards. I want to be Nana Vert. Like Dad's name," she exclaimed happily, running around Cyan. Cyan, however, didn't understand how the little one knew his full name. Brian felt worried for Nana's future. It's over for her. She's going to be bullied by the other kids. The scene shifted to the Royal Academy Dean's office. The headmaster, Kundal Kazel, was currently working on documents while contemplating. Cyan Vert. I knew that he had a lot of potential, but to absorb a 4-star spell using a 1-star black sphere. He's scarily talented. But it didn't seem like it took him that much effort. I want to know your limits, Cyan Bert. Now let's learn a little about the identity of the headmaster. The headmaster's name is Kundal Kazel. He's taught the current emperor, Deong Severus, and is also the father of the last empress, Diana Kazel. Kazel, one of the few 9-star mages on the continent, has been focusing solely on the education of students at the academy after the death of Diana Kazel. Outside the hallway, Cyan approached the headmaster's office, pondering, there is one thing I want to know about him. I had always thought that he was a pacifist. But in this life, he suddenly intervened in the royal succession fight. As Cyan walked, he suddenly felt a magical disturbance in the hallway. Cyan lightly tapped, and a boundary immediately appeared, created by powerful magic. Moreover, the energy composition was very pure and solid. Cyan smiled with interest. His personality hasn't changed though, it seems. He knew that I was coming, and still put up a 9-star area restriction barrier. Alright, if this is a test, I'll take it. The principal in the room at that moment also sensed the fluctuation of the barrier, guessing that Cyan had arrived. He was eager to see how Cyan would overcome it. Now, what will you do? Only a great mage can destroy such a barrier. He thought it would take at least half an hour for Cyan to get through. But suddenly, Cyan appeared from the window right behind the principal's desk. Somehow, he had jumped straight through and into the room, bypassing the barrier entirely. Cyan landed in a superhero pose, looking incredibly cool. He then turned around, wide-eyed, and said to the principal, Dean Kundal? I'm Cyan Vert, an incoming student. I came to express my disagreement with the complaint. The principal was still in shock. He ignored the barrier and came through the window. I lost this one, he thought. The principal slowly asked, your disagreement? Cyan nodded and replied, yes, it said that the letter came from you. But after seeing that barrier outside, I became certain of one thing. The warning letter was just an excuse. To test my talent, wasn't it? The principal stopped pretending and answered, right. It was rather aggressive, but you successfully proved your talents. But I will not take back the warning. You can try to persuade me otherwise. Cyan felt quite indignant but couldn't do anything about it. He said, then can I ask you one thing? Go on. Cyan asked, do you want the expansion of the empire? Or do you want honor for your family? The principal was quite surprised by Cyan's question. After a brief moment of thought, the principal replied, that's quite a bold question. Neither is my concern. Cyan continued, is that so? Then, after the death of Emperor Deong, if the 3rd or 4th prince were to try and take the throne instead of the 1st prince, you won't take sides? At this point, the principal became angry. The magic power within him began to surge and show signs of bursting out. He replied in a growling voice, you're not just bold. You're arrogant. Cyan, unafraid, thought to himself, I was a doll for Ashel? I don't think you're any different from my past self. In my past life during the throne succession fight, Kundal had a large influence in making the 1st prince, Louis Severus, the emperor. Louis was a cruel and vicious man. He killed all of his siblings. And when Kundal was against this, he framed Kundal as a traitor of the empire and sentenced him to death. He had worked to brighten the future of someone else but ended up being betrayed by this very person. The principal could no longer contain his anger. He stood up, slammed the table, and shouted, nonsense. You think the peace of the last century will fall so easily? I thought you were a genius, but you are nothing more than a fool. Cyan calmly continued, the mother of the 1st prince and 2nd princess died from an illness, and the 3rd and 4th princes are fair matches for the 1st prince too. The Nepellus household that Empress Cassandra comes from is very well known for being greedy for power. That household will do anything to keep their position of power. In my opinion, the empire's peace is already on a thin line. And the day that peace falls, this academy will be over for. The principal was extremely astonished, his eyes widening in horror. Is this really the thought process of an 11-year-old? He knows every detail of the current political climate. The principal then lowered his voice and asked, what are you telling me this for? Cyan leisurely replied, I want to make a deal with you. I will help you for the peace of your family and the academy. In return, withdraw the warning letter. Suddenly, a voice laughed, accompanied by a beam of light shining down from the ceiling, leaving Cyan bewildered. What power do you have to help me? At this moment, the principal had drawn a 69-ring magic circle with a finger. It was so large it covered the entire ceiling. Let your arrogance crush you. The principal flicked his finger down, casting the spell, Chains of Judgment. Immediately, numerous magic chains from the circle surged out and bound Cyan's limbs and body. Moreover, the pressure from these chains was immense, forcing Cyan to crouch down. Despite this, Cyan was not panicked but instead smiled excitedly, thinking to himself, "Do you want to fight, Dean?"
Thank you all for watching our video today. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing to our channel and turning on notifications so you won't miss any future uploads. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below about what you'd like to see next. See you in the next video.